All right. So as I mentioned, this is a joint event of LLM Space and Deepchecks and LLM Space, and this is where I'm doing the moderation for all events. At least in the meantime. So we're hosting Deepchecks for a different type of event we haven't had yet, which is basically a product launch event. Also here, the product launch event isn't just a buy my stuff type event. It's supposed to be interesting and engaging for anyone that's interested in the topic, which in this case is evaluating LLM-based apps. And in this case, we'll also be showing a product here for the first time. Just a bit about this type of event, which I think we'll have in the future. So a criteria for it is it has to be to be able, if any of you or your teams also have similar products you'll be wanting to launch in the future, it's definitely a possibility. And the criteria is that it hasn't really been publicly relaunched before this. So this is the first major exposure, and I think it's supposed to make it at least a bit more interesting. So again, I send this in the chat, I'll send it again, but questions not over here in the Zoom, questions in the Discord, in the general chat. And feel free to continue engaging after, feel free to send direct messages when relevant. And a big part of this is to continue the conversation within the community, within the LLM space, which is broader than any one specific company or topic. But it's also not too broad because it's supposed to talk only about LLMs and not about everything else. So a bit about the community. LLM Space is a global community for LLM practitioners. Also here, it was really exciting to see in the signups, people signing in from all over the world, where these types of things just weren't really possible till a few years ago. The community focuses both on discussions, but also on content. So both content that comes from discussions and just content, kind of external content, publishing not only the events that we have, and also events related to also external events. Anyone that has interesting events is welcome to send them to moderators. There's a designated channel and so forth. So the community's been growing pretty quickly, and it's exciting. So who's working on LLM Ops? There's a list of products and companies. I've shown this in the past events, but just gives you the feeling that there's really a lot to listen, a lot to learn. And this is part of the need that we see in this community, which means let's take, not dive into one very, very specific topic, but I'm thinking at least of these events as something that has to kind of make sense from an educational point of view, has to have kind of like a syllabus. And if you attended many events in a row, that you should be pretty well-rounded with everything related to LLM Ops. Of course, the sessions aren't like 10-hour sessions, so it's not diving in, it's not hands-on necessarily in every session. But this is at least part of the goal of the LLM Ops space, is to be able to give a good feel what the entire stack looks like. So something else I just want to mention. So together with the everything that we're talking about that has to do with what we're doing here, which is kind of more intellectual and showing the need and showing the problems, etc. So maybe I'll just take 1 second. We're having a product launch. We would love the good support of people here, especially those that have an account before. So maybe just 1 second. I'll take a second to send the link. And we would love help on Product Hunt. And yeah, would love to have a similar arrangement in other kind of launch days. I don't know if Product Hunt together with an event like this might be a teeny bit, a teeny bit too busy. But anyway, that's what I just sent now. And yeah, so the idea, what you see here is it's a LLM evaluation module that includes validation, monitoring, and safeguarding, which, definitely more of Shir and Yaron's hat kind of today to discuss. So would love to hear, feedback, comments are welcome, and any thoughts that you have either during the event or after the event are interesting. A bit about the speakers. It's a bit weird for me to be introducing my colleagues, but definitely makes sense here. Shir, my co-founder with me from day one or day -1 at Deepchecks, started this venture in her living room basically. So Shir's a CTO of Deepchecks, passionate and experienced data scientist, and comes both from machine learning and general algorithmic research. And she was both with me and on her own in the Talpiot Excellence program, which is a really interesting program in Israel where she got a lot of her background. Yaron, VP Product at Deepchecks. He's led significant both product and development teams at great companies, including Microsoft, Facebook, etc. He also is co-founder and was CEO of 2 startups. One of them was sold to eBay. So a bit about the agenda for today. So we're going to talk, they're going to talk about LLM challenges and risks. I'm just going to do my best to take your questions and to give comments when relevant. We're going to give introduction to LLM evaluation and creating, an evaluation set. And we're going to be talking, we're going to be seeing the LLM evaluation for the first time, not the first time any eyes on earth have ever seen it, but at any time it's not in like a, one-on-one or kind of closed session. As I continue here just for a second, I'm going to launch the first poll. So just launched the first poll, which is asking, what's the current LLM model that you're using or current API that you're using, where the options are either GPT 3.5 or GPT-4, Llama, another open source model, or other proprietary LLM modules. In the meantime, it seems like there's a vast majority that's with GPT 3.5 or GPT-4, which is interesting. I know in many cases, obviously, there are a few different options, and sometimes you might have a single app that's using more than one of them, but try to go with the one that that you're using the most, just for this case. Okay, great. We have 66% voting, so I'll continue here for a bit. I'll just say, if you're interested in speaking at future events, either you or a colleague of yours, someone you would recommend, it can be either with a more general intellectual type of talk, or it could be launching a new product. Launching an open source product is even better when you're doing it, but anything that's new, hasn't been introduced before, and is in the space could definitely be relevant to host as well, kind of like we're doing this for the first time. And moving over to Shir. So you can try to guess how many participants we have live here. I'll just say I'm going to show the poll here, and we have 72% participation. So you get a pat on the back if you manage to understand how many people are here. So I'm ending the poll and I'm sharing the results. So yeah, this is pretty crazy. I mean, I think we know that GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 are the most common, but it's 80%, which is I think astonishing. And it's especially astonishing because of the large budgets and so many people working at teams that are working on the other modules. And I think it's clear that they're a bit ahead, and that OpenAI are a bit ahead, at least in terms of some of the criteria, but still it's very interesting to see this live. So yeah, we said 80% GPT 3.5 or GPT-4, Llama with 12%, 7% with other open source LLM models, where I think there were some new ones that were just recently announced, and only 1% with other proprietary LLM models. Interesting to hear the story and hear the comparisons, of course. Right. Just reminding again, I'm going to send the link. Questions not over here. I see we're starting to have some questions. One question that we always get is, will there be a recording? I'll take that soon. There will be a recording. We always like to add some wrong facts, into the recording just to incentivize watching real time. You have to think if that's a joke or not. Anyway, over to you, Shir.
Awesome, thank you. And so I'm indeed super excited to be here and introduce our product launch. Maybe one thing worth adding to the great intro from Philip that you didn't mention is that actually we had a conversation quite a few years back when you told me that, well, Shir, if you love algorithms and you love training, usually sports, but does it really matter that we should hop over to machine learning? And he didn't tell me that a few years later, with LLMs, we'll probably do a bit less of hands-on training, but we do that as well. And well, obviously, no need to elaborate a lot about how LLMs are in the process of transforming lots of things we do, and also not that much of a need to elaborate about various challenges. But I think solving them is still a big issue. And what we're going to talk about is both some concepts, thoughts, the challenges that we've been facing in the process and in working with prospects, and also how we solve them and approach them currently. And of course, as promised, we'll also finish with a hands-on demo by Yaron to show you these concepts live. So, well, I said that there's no need elaborating, but still, let's mention that LLM applications are everywhere, and well, for a good reason. I mean, they exceed easily human performance in a variety of tasks, enabling to go over tons of data that we can't actually, or just doing stuff much quicker, or yeah, like, well, no need to really elaborate about the advantages. And of course, we've seen quite a lot of different types of weird stuff going on, whether it's hallucinations or whether it's this love story published a while back between a New York Times reporter and Bing's AI chat. And this obviously the great potential along with the big challenges mean that there's something interesting to solve here. So where do we actually see this in the wild, or what are the most popular use cases that we've been seeing so far? These are a few of them, whether it's like question answering for chat with our docs, or customer support kind of use cases, or summarization of meetings, legal documents, and quite a variety of content creation, coding generation, coding testing, and so forth. I will mention that a distinction worth making is the LLM app, is the output a generative type output, in which it creates its own kind of free text, or outputs that are free form, unstructured, or are they like we have also LLM-based apps which have a classification, for example, output. I'll say that the treatment or evaluation has some more specific additional nuances when we're talking about when the output is generative and freeform. And many of these challenges are that we can't use like classic, like for example, for a classification task, right? We have the metrics relevant, and we can also use them in LLM apps. So I'll say that when it's generative, there are a few additional challenges, but the things I'm talking about are relevant for both, because obviously also if it's like a classification test, still we have a free text input, and still we have quite a lot of things that can go astray. Yeah, so that's a bit of a promo about some use cases. And things to think about or notice related to evaluation is that obviously the context in which we're using the app is relevant to the considerations that we should put in place when we think about like what are the things we have to evaluate. So that was a long sentence, so I'll just kind of bring it down to earth. So for example, the user. If the user is an internal company user, probably the safety measures I need for it, for example, not to give me wrong information, or even to talk in a less appropriate manner, obviously I wouldn't want it to do it, but the implications are probably less troubling than if it would be kind of any user in the wild. If it's maybe it's a child, for example, which then you need like additional safety measures and so forth. So that's like one thing which really changes how we should consider where should we put our kind of limitations. And a few additional things, well, the usage scenario in general, of course, what does the LLM app do? Like, does it just give me information? Does it actually do some actions? Like if it now creates a new booking, or charges my credit card, or retrieves some data from the company's inside DB, obviously the risk or things I should make sure that don't happen are a bit different than if it just is a chatbot that I talk with for fun. And there are various constraints or considerations that are relevant, whether it's to the business scenario or to just kind of a real life stuff. For example, the base model, obviously we have things like costs, latency, sometimes business kind of with who do we have the contract, where can we run, which models can we use, and also things like maybe we want to use the simplest or cheapest or easiest model that will give us good enough performance. So this is something that many times we want to kind of compare various options and choose the one that fits our needs best. And last thing is availability of data sets and annotations. This is more kind of a theoretical thought, but had we had unlimited data set and the ability to immediately annotate any example, probably some of the evaluation related challenges would be a bit simpler. But since both of these, having data sets that represent reality and also being able to efficiently annotate them, is a big challenge, that makes the whole process of evaluation a bit more challenging. So without further ado, I'll jump right into LLM evaluation itself. So with a kind of brief view, why shouldn't we just use classic machine learning evaluation techniques? Well, I'll tell you already, the quick answer is that they're not relevant as is. In classic ML, we build an evaluation set, a representative one, evaluate each sample, calculate the metric, and estimate the overall performance to decide, is it good enough? So easy, let's just use that, right? Well, not so simple, because what is representative data set when we're talking about textual inputs, like what is similar or not? And how do we check out for edge cases? And more so, many times we have things that may seem edge cases, like, okay, it asks me about something that I don't know, or it tries to, get a specific type of info, or maybe tries to make me behave in a manner that the app isn't supposed to. And these can be kind of treated as edge cases, but maybe they're also quite like regular kind of usage scenarios. So I really want to be able to save these, track them over time, and so forth. And it's a bit more complex than just having, a bunch of numbers which you want to, okay, let's check that the distributions are the same, when it's kind of much more dispersed. And the other part is, how do we evaluate it? Like, how do we compare different stuff? What is evaluation criteria? So that's exactly why we're going to talk about these two topics. And one is building a data set for evaluation, and the other one is how to build a methodological efficient evaluation, whether it's what are the criteria and what are the recommended techniques. So building an evaluation set. Yeah, I thought Philippi sent something on chat, but no. Building an evaluation set. So first of all, I'll just mention like a general process for doing it. In order to start, one second before that, the most important thing about building an evaluation set is building it. Because if you don't have one, then how can you benchmark? How can you understand your performance? How do you know like whether it's okay or not? So don't fear and kind of jump in. Once you start, of course, we have some recommendations on how to do it properly. So first of all, just construct an initial one, whether it's manually or you can also generate additional samples in an LLM-assisted manner. Constantly update it. What does that mean? Add like bad examples, various edge cases, places like where the LLM, and unknown is an example I like to give because it's sometimes not that clear. Unknown can be actually a good answer, or it can be a bad answer. So you really want to try kind of, checking out the variety of behaviors and understanding what would be the most representative one of the production use cases. And another thing here is topics and characteristics. So you want like that evaluation set to be as close as possible to your app in production, whether it's what are the types of questions users ask it, whether it's how long they are or how complex and so forth. And you would want to have something that behaves the same distribution-wise. And last, but certainly not least, is how to or to actually make sure that you efficiently evaluate the performance on it. Because if you've built it, and even if you've done a really good job for that part, but when you want to deploy a new one, it's very resource consuming, takes a long time, so forth, then it's much harder to actually maintain it over time. And once we have a evaluation set, let's talk about how to actually do the evaluation itself. So let's start with the evaluation criteria, which is quite simple. We want it to be good, right? I have a task, solve it, please. Well, also good is not that easily defined, because I can, for example, let's say I'm asking I would want recipes for Thanksgiving dinner, include both for vegetarians and for meat lovers. So maybe I got a recipe, but they forgot the vegetarian part. So was the task fulfilled? Yes, partially. Was the quality good? Well, you'll have to judge that on the taste later. But maybe like giving some more examples from a bit more kind of a real life use cases. So I may have, for example, a right answer, but maybe it wasn't, for example, in the right formality level. Okay, I want let's say the output is I gave before the example of legal summarization. So maybe it did actually summarize it and even correctly, but it didn't do it in the form or manner that I wanted it to. So also, is it good? Has a few specific kind of nuances to it to evaluate how good it is. And we should really kind of think how to build that criteria. I'll mention it in a second, some ideas for thought about that. And the other part, which we look kind of as a secondary criteria, which would not make something good, but obviously if something is problematic, then you'll probably not want those types of outputs. And that is a wide variety of things. So for example, if it's a child asking how to make a Thanksgiving dinner, we wouldn't necessarily want to now instruct them to, open the oven and start cutting with the biggest knife they have in the kitchen some meal or another. And also, if we're, let's say, a company of a specific oven, we wouldn't want them to recommend to buy a competitor's oven and then, do the process. Or so there are also some various kind of things that maybe, again, are right, but are problematic for your use case. And one or a few, I do like to have important stuff that I don't put inside the slide, so I make sure people are also listening. So I'll say that the kind of the tip of how do we actually build a criteria? I won't give the exact recipe, but I will say a few things to keep in mind. And one thing is to make sure you consult or think or evaluate a variety of samples with kind of domain experts and try to say, okay, what are they looking for? And when they look at a sample, how do they evaluate, and try to build a criteria that tries to, or present that as accurately as possible. And another thing is to think about is that you want this to be robust also to small changes. Like, let's say if a small perturbation did a very big change to your score, then that's probably not the best, right? Because these things aren't, as we know, aren't that necessarily consistent. And last but not least also is that you would want to make sure, or kind of penalize or make sure that it doesn't also leave space for it to not know stuff and not try to instead make up, or so basically know what you don't know as well. So that's a bit about how to build or think about it. If I really sum it up as a kind of short sentence, we talk about having a combined criteria, which is, first of all, is it good, and then also verifying that it's not problematic, or the other way around, but essentially you need both. And
wait, just 1 second, Shir. I'm gonna launch the next survey now. I just wanna mention, I think, testing, evaluation, these are all things that have been around for a while. I think some of the way Shir is formalizing it, which are actually leading up to the event, we had some discussions. It's pretty different, right? And a lot of what from classic machine learning, even if this seems like, yeah, every sentence here makes sense, you usually have some sort of test set with some sort of number, and that's pretty much it. You might also have soft considerations on top of it, but I mean, this is pretty different, and this is kind of why it feels a bit like reinventing the wheel. So in a good way, not like
reinventing and not because you're at reinvent.
Yeah, inventing the wheel, not reinventing the wheel. Thank you so much. So I'm launching the next survey, which is, how are you currently evaluating your LLM model based applications? Yeah, sorry for the typo there. So we're not of course, those of you that are just kind of in general ideation, of course, the answer is probably not currently evaluating, which is one of them. There's also manual efforts, where manual efforts means a team of people with more technical background, less technical background, go and kind of sit down, tag certain have some sort of way for saying what's good, what isn't good. It could be just creating a set of answers that are good enough. We've seen some answers, we've seen some use cases where the subject matter experts kind of actually write what's considered good answers. I think we can talk about why that doesn't solve all the use cases, but we definitely see that in the market. There's using an existing tool. There are some other tools which have been released in the space, even if each one has a different approach. And another one is we developed an internal tool, which I think is definitely more relevant the larger the companies and the more engineers there are. And each one, everything here is interesting. All right, so
a good example of, Philip, a good example of know what you don't know is, if you currently don't yet have an LLM-based app, then don't fill the survey, because you probably don't have
So that's what they're not currently evaluating is for, I think, is one of the answers.
Really, but it's different if I have an app and I'm not evaluating it, but I am deploying it to production, or I don't have an app and I'm not evaluating it. But
you're right. But there are only 4 slots in the Zoom surveys, I think. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's what I remember. Anyway,
we'll talk about sampling bias later.
Okay, great. Yeah. So all right. So we're at 66% participation. So how about you do one more slide, and then we'll have a look at the poll results.
Okay, but it may show some correct answers for this one. Anyway, so evaluation techniques, we see three main ones. One is having a heuristic, like model-based evaluation. What does that mean? Things like having a regular expression that, will find a specific, let's say I need a date in my output, so verifying that it has a date. Or it can be things like detecting if, a specific topic was, so usually the thing for heuristic or model-based ones, modeling kind of a simple model, or can be also a fine-tuned transform and so forth, is that it's automatic, works good, but doesn't necessarily work for like general use cases, but it has to be very specific, cheap and quick. A more kind of sophisticated way is LLM-based, which is also automatic, quite complex to standardize, to make sure you actually get the same results, even if you use temperature 0, and relatively costly. And human-based, which is obviously the most kind of robust and adaptable, but it's also manual, time-consuming. Like from what we know from users, it sometimes takes a few minutes per sample to actually get the results. So obviously, if you want, for example, whether it's to evaluate lots of samples or even to be able to do some real-time monitoring, then it's not really a relevant one. And of course, it's costly and time-consuming, which I mentioned. So it's not that easy to maintain an efficient evaluation pipeline, and that's also why it's one of the things that we're tackling. And happily, we're now going to introduce or talk about some of our ideas and concepts for methodological evaluation, which includes lots of stuff, but one of the main stuff it includes is the ability to really achieve a per sample understanding of your sample's behavior, performance, how your data set looks overall, where it's performing better, where worse, and so forth. So except this enabling and helping overall performance evaluation, it's also good for quick iteration between versions, like comparing versions, understanding whether you want to, for example, deploy a new version, or like the example we gave at the beginning with different base models. So maybe I have, one much cheaper one, and is it good enough so I can compare its performance to the more sophisticated one, and so forth. And of course, also for production monitoring, because essentially this is a more kind of a deep check philosophy in general, but production monitoring is testing and evaluating over time. So once you're able to achieve this understanding, what you need is to track this and have, identify stuff like degradation or drift and so forth. So what are these concepts that we talk about, or how do we use them to achieve a deep what was that, a deep first sample understanding of your sample and then your overall performance? So properties. What are properties? Like the one-liner is transforming unstructured data to numerical or categorical values. So what does that mean? Basically, for each sample, or we call it interaction, we want to have various values that characterize it. So these can be technical things like the length of the input, of the output, number of tokens. Again, also things like, did it have a date or not? So various things, what is the structure and so forth. It can be the form, which is also structure, or also some like related stuff, and the content. So one example that I love about content is, and it's relevant for RAG use cases where we have an information retrieval step, is grounded in context. So what is the grounded in context properties? It inspects the output.
By the way, there was a question about this, and I said to wait because I knew you'd touch it. So yeah, now is a good time for that.
Okay, awesome. I will say maybe it's a good time, both those of you that want to check it out, feel free to go to the link at the bottom and sign up, and then you'll be able also to talk with us and get access to the system. And also, what I think we don't have here, but I can send later in the chat, is the link to our documentation, where we have, for example, documentation with our built-in properties, and also should be there how you can send custom properties and so forth. So these are two resources worth noting. Anyway, so after I built up some tension before grounded in context, so what is that property? We inspect the output, and then we check whether the output is actually based on the info or the context given in the information retrieval step. Why is this relevant? Because maybe we got a great answer, only it was a complete hallucination of the model. So finding that the facts, or the actual output is based on what happened there, obviously it's much higher chances that it actually correct or relevant. And yeah, well, example I also gave before is like a formality level structure. So there's really like a wide variety of properties. You'll also see them in the demo, language, quite a few things. So we have this, let's say, metadata or like describing, characterizing data about each sample. What do we do with it? Oh, and well, I mentioned also the ability to send custom properties. So what do we do with it? It helps. We can first of all understand better our data set. So whether it's filter it according to specific properties or specific, like sort out, rather sorting than filtering, like look at a specific property value and look at the, high values, low values, yeah, filter on a specific, like on specific language and so forth. And also, and this really is property dependent, many of them can be indicators for is the sample good or bad. So just maybe to give like a more example of, well, grounded in context, obviously, if it's kind of 0, meaning that the output isn't at all related to the information retrieval use case, that would likely be an indicator for problematic or potentially problematic response. And maybe one more thing noting that are helpful with properties is that maybe the property itself isn't relevant for the annotation. Like let's say output length, okay? We may have very short and very long outputs that are both good and bad, but we may find some interesting behaviors, like let's say the app is performing much worse on very short outputs or inputs, or on a specific language. So they also help us to segment and kind of slice and dice and understand various behaviors of our LLM app to improve them. And
okay, one second. We're going to end the poll and share it for a second here. All right. So yeah, so interesting. And this is always selection bias, right? The people that are doing some sort of evaluation kind of come, but it's interesting to see. So most common is manual efforts with 48% for evaluating. Second one is not currently evaluating, which as Shir and I discovered here in the conversation, is probably a mix of people that don't have something that's approaching production, or have just thinking about the LLM-based app, and some that have something but it's not yet important for them, or it is important, they just aren't getting to it. Then using that's at 26%. Using an existing tool and developing an internal tool are about equal, 13 and 14%, correspondingly. Okay, all right, so back to you.
Awesome. I'll address actually the manual effort soon in the next slide. So talking about properties, evaluation, and for sample understanding, a good thing to something that we find very important and critical is how do we build an efficient annotation pipeline. And one part of it is enabling at least parts of it to be automatic. So what does that mean, or how do we do it? Well, we'll see a few examples in the demo, but to give you a bit of the concepts is, so one thing is similarity. So what is similarity? I'll mention here a challenge that is also actually only in LLM-based apps, or mainly in or generative actually apps, is that for each version, we will usually need an annotation. So it's not enough, like it's not that we can have, okay, a golden set annotated once, and now we can just, check every output compared to that. Because how do you know if let's say we have a ground truth, and then we have a new output, it's not that clear. How do we know if, given that's the ground truth, is the new output good or not? So similarity is basically identifying or using previous versions in order to automatically annotate the new version. So and then making it obviously much more efficient because you need to manually annotate less samples. Properties, or using the properties, I mentioned that before and gave a few examples for how properties could be indications, whether it's to bad or to good annotations. LLM-assisted annotation, as I mentioned in the evaluation techniques, which can be used, of course, also to get an automatic annotation, or to use it within the automatic annotation pipeline. And well, customizable is a word that mentions that our automatic annotation pipeline within the Deepcheck system is customizable. So basically, we use the concepts seen here, and they can be prioritized, tuned, automatically run, rerun, compared, because you can't get a perfect automatic annotation pipeline out of the box, but you can get quite a nice one, and then you can improve it. And an important note is that it supports manual updates. So whether it's some some samples just won't be annotated if they didn't, fall within any buckets. And also maybe sometimes you wanna fix or improve. The idea here is that while those of you that answered in the survey, I guess you've already, or some of you have experienced the pain or the time of, every time manually annotating everything, or then, either skipping it and so forth. And here, what we do is a combined effort, making it both widespread and also efficient and accurate. And happy to hand it over to Yaron for the hands-on demo. Unless maybe, Philip, if there are any questions that are worth answering now, just right before the demo, mainly also if it's related to stuff that is directly the stuff in the last few slides.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to answer them live in real time in Discord, but I'll say some of the highlights. I don't know if I have to refer anything to you at this point before the demo. One of the Dror Hillman said, I found that GPT-4 is a good self-evaluator itself, but it's expensive and slow for large systems. So I just want to say, I agree with the disadvantages. I did find that for complex use cases, it's also hard. It's also hard. It's not, it also doesn't work. So, there are a lot of tricks and ways to get it to work better. But a lot of times when you try it for something very, very clear, where either it answered something regular about, your documentation, or gave an answer about Martians, or outer space, and then that works well. When you're talking about little nuances, and if there's an extra negative word or whatever, there are a lot of difficulties there. We're working on it and spending a lot of time and resources on it also for this, so we are utilizing it, but no easy solutions here for sure. So that's just one comment I wanted to say. It's not so much a question. Then I think there was another question here about is it easier, or there's a paper that I'm not sure, Imjonez is the name of the user in Discord, not sure the full and the proper name, about if it's easier to cheat, if smaller models are easier to cheat the classic evaluation metrics. So I just want to say, what the team here, Yaron and Shir, are presenting is not a classic evaluation metric. It's not like some sort of number like the blue, etc., that you can kind of scam a bit. It's a combination between kind of manual work, configuring what's more or less important to you, and then evaluating based on that. So hopefully that makes it a little harder to cheat. And obviously there's always potential for, I'm sure that there'll be a paper about how to cheat this system in a bit. There are a couple of other questions, but I think given the time, let's pass it over to Yaron.
So thank you very much. I'm just organizing my screen quickly. So following up on Shir's great presentation, let's see how everything comes together into our solution. So what Deepcheck supports is the full life cycle of development, starting from the development of an LLM application, moving to testing, moving to production. The golden set or evaluation set is really a means of providing a quality score for pre-production versions and experiments. It kind of lets you define the set of samples that are used to measure the quality and set the baseline for you before uploading stuff into production. Production, that's pretty clear. That's where you will be able to evaluate your real life usage data. So in all life cycle stages, we give you pretty extensive set of information, all relates to kind of the categories that Shir was talking about. So grounded in context, Shir spoke about it. Relevance, that's pretty clear. Retrieval relevance speaks about how relevant is the answer of the retrieval step in the RAG process. And this is just one example. This is an HR demo application, means it's an HR RAG application based on a fictitious open source HR documents of a company. So retrieval relevance measures the relevancy of your retrieval step to your question. Toxicity and sentiment are safety measures, and you can see technical stuff such as language, sentence count, and we have many, many more, way too much to talk about right now. So really building the golden set is an essential step as it sets the baseline for measuring quality. How do you do it? So you start in a very simple way. You can start with a CSV. You import it here. It can be annotated or not annotated. Once the data is important, Deepchecks estimates the annotation. And Shir spoke about the importance of this estimated annotation process. I'll speak a little bit more about it. First of all, how do we do that? It's a combination of open source proprietary and LLM-based models. We start by eliminating stuff such as things that did not stand to a certain threshold on retrieval relevance or grounded in context, going back to the question by one of the participants here. We use the similarity algorithm to define, is there a similar example that we have already seen? And then we take all of this large amount of information, combine it into a smart prompt and send it to an LLM if we haven't found the annotation so far by the steps I've described above. So the estimated annotation saves you the need to do the costly process of manual annotation. Some of our customers are telling us that manual annotation takes them 3 to 5 minutes per sample. Now, figure out how much time that's going to cost you if you will have a recommended golden set of a couple of hundreds of samples. Way too much to do an agile release process. So with Deepchecks, you can now evaluate. So you have an estimated score. Now you can take a look at all of the steps, the input, the information retrieval, full prompt, response, and if your application is more complex, all of the steps are going to be here, and you're going to see the results of all of these properties. Now, once you know that this is either correct or incorrect, you can override the score using this menu. So it also we also give you the ability to do manual annotations. And really the key concept is that we provide you a way to get annotations for non-technical users. So no code solution to evaluate the quality of your LLM application. So now let's switch back and take a look at the production tab, which talks about the production stage of the application. Of course, you don't want to, or most likely you don't want to get data to this section using a CSV. So there is an SDK. With the SDK, you can get all of the steps that we've discussed before and way beyond. If you're working with LangChain, we have an integration with LangChain as well. So we give you the capability of reporting and logging all of the details per sample. And of course, what's really important on the production side is getting the estimated annotation. For a reasonably loaded application, there is no way that you will have someone manually annotate each and every sample on the production side. So with all this, these great things here, what happens when something goes wrong? That's pretty important. So first thing is all the stuff that you see here. So the topics that slice your input into clusters of topics, those weak segments, properties, each and every one of them defines a filter when you go and see the sampled view. So let's take a look at an example, grounded in context, related to, again, to that comment before. Just reminding you, grounded in context speaks about how grounded is the answer relatively to the information that was given to the prompt. So relatively to the information that was retrieved from your vector database, as an example. So grounded in context here is read under the threshold, which I believe is 0.7. And if we will take a look at the lowest values here, we will see that there are a couple of interesting examples here. So maybe let's take a look at a couple of others. And let's now sort by bad examples. And we see here this specific example, what are the core values of the company? And the answer is the core values of the company are vision, mission, and strategy. That sounds like a result of GPT 0.01 or something ridiculous like that. So if you take a look at the retrieval, information retrieval step, it has pretty good answers here. The full prompt included the information retrieved in the previous results. So something went wrong between the prompt and the response. This is the place to actually take the link, send it to one of the developers, and file a bug. So you've done the initial phase of the root cause analysis. Someone is going to do more work now. Another example would be in between versions. So we have version 5 here. Let's take a look at its production score. It's pretty low, 35%. Version 4 had 41%. Something seems to be off here. So we have a couple of hints to what went wrong. This weak segment of relevancy lower than 0.31 has 73 samples and score 0. And if you would view this, you can now add another property. So let's add the retrieval relevance, because this, I mean, looks kind of in the area. And now let's filter to really low retrieval relevance results. We'll have 37 items here. And at this point, I would take this set of samples, export it into a CSV, send it to the rest of the development team, or work on it myself and solve the problem. But you can do one more thing, which is really important. Now you can take a sample of those. So I mean, just for the sake of discussion, choose, a couple and copy them to the golden set. Now you've made sure that the next time you do regression testing, you will test also for this type of examples. And by that, you will be able to actually complete the dev cycle and make sure the next time you release, you won't see this phenomenon. So to summarize, we saw how Deepchecks is used in order to validate your LLM-powered applications before and after launching it to production. I'm sure you have some questions, and I'm sure you're all eager to see how you can just remove this, how you can sign up for this. So this is the page on our website to sign up for a 4-week free trial available. Thank you very much.